Brett's episode is about right-wing cancel culture. There's been kind of this large controversy ever since Brett left the Daily Wire because the Daily Wire has a history of people working with them and then kind of splitting off.
The internet is a giant gossip chamber here.
It's high
I'm so
school.
glad we don't engage with that, guys.
Yeah.
We're above it all.
We don't do any of that.
I mean,
Brett was very intentional in how she chose the topic for this first episode. It was really wise of her to go at it from the position she did. She didn't overtly say anything about Daily Wire, but she addressed, I guess you could say, the elephant in the room.
Hello, and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Our episode today is about Brett Cooper. She's launched her new show, The Brett Cooper Show, on YouTube. She has recently split from the Daily Wire, so we'll dig into that. And we'll talk about what her episode's about and what we think about it. We'll get to that. But first, the Pop Culture Contrarian is brought to you by The Patriot Post, which is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. We're very grateful to them. They are our employers. The Pop Culture Contrarian is on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you find your podcasts. On YouTube, make sure to hit the bell so you know when a new video drops. And let's get to it, guys.
Okay.
All right.
So Brett's episode, her inaugural episode, which we just watched in the 30 minutes after it came out.
Yeah.
And it is now an hour and a half old, this episode.
Yeah.
Is about, let's talk about right-wing cancel culture.
I wonder if she'll have another one drop before our releases.
I don't know about that because she does say she's going to take her time and kind of pick meatier subjects instead of just jumping on every news cycle.
I mean, and to that point also, I bet she's got a lot smaller staff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so probably producing
Even-
videos
yeah.
is going to take more time.
I would say even just from her equipment setup, it looks like, and then they did a great job, but
Yeah.
even like the audio is a little bit different.
It's a much lower budget.
Yeah. I mean, she was saying what she was working with her grandpa, putting up shiplap.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa. That's too damn bad.
You know, this is a hand-built studio, probably by her own sweat, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that's what she said. Although I did think it's interesting, she was talking about the shiplap on the ceiling to cover up the popcorn ceiling, but I mean, you don't know what our ceiling looks like in here. I don't know that we're ever going to know what the ceiling looks like in her studio, so.
Do we even have a ceiling?
Right.
Did you ever think of painting that ceiling?
This is actually open air.
There's no ceiling to the pop culture.
There's no
contrarians.
ceiling.
But anyhow, I think that just kind of demonstrates she's doing the thing right. She's worried about the ceiling, even though that will probably never be on camera.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Attention to detail.
It does
makes
look
a lot
like
of
she's
sense.
got a larger studio than we do, though. So
Yes,
a
well,
little jealous on that
it would be
part.
hard to have a smaller studio than we have.
Yeah.
All right, so there's been kind of this large controversy ever since Brett left the Daily Wire because the Daily Wire has a history of people working with them and then kind of splitting off. And in the past, it's been pretty, what's the right word? Angry. There's a word I'm looking for, but I can't find it.
Acrimonious.
Acrimonious.
No, they're split up with somewhat acrimonious.
I think that it is a business that does media stuff and it has talent come and go, as every media business does.
Yeah.
It's just that it's kind of the biggest conservative media player on the block in the new media sphere. And
Right.
so-
And they're trying to work with all the best new talent.
yeah.
And it's not going to work out every time, but that doesn't mean it was a mistake.
They do have a way of kind of launching careers.
They do.
And so, you know, it comes to a point where an individual like this, same with Candace Owens, rises to a level, you know, with the foundation and the money and the platform of Daily Wire to huge prominence. And then they kind of get bigger.
Then they're able to grow.
Right.
Like Daily Wire. Yeah.
But then when it comes to, okay, we can't agree on the value proposition anymore, then how does the splitting go? And then we see a difference between violent or acrimonious versus, in this case, amicable.
It's seemingly amicable, yeah. Despite what the internet might have you believe.
Gosh, the internet is such a wonderful tool.
And the internet will have you believe
Yeah,
things.
the internet
Yes.
is a giant gossip chamber here.
It's
Yeah.
high
I'm so
school.
glad we don't engage with that, guys.
Yeah.
We're above it all.
We don't do any of that.
I
ever.
mean, I think that what has been, I mean, you're pointing out the kind of the talent outgrowing the company, effectively, you could say. And it's always a little bit of the chicken and the egg argument.
Which one came first? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously the talent has talent or they wouldn't even be working for that company. But the company also provides a platform and marketing and all these other things that help to magnify the talent. And so there's that question of like, which did more?
Yeah.
And that seems to be what's played out, at least in this latest drama between the Daily Wire and Brett Cooper. Not really that I think there's much drama between them.
Personally.
Personally, I mean, there's probably little. Anytime you leave one company or job and move on, there can be something.
But I mean, it's just like it's kind of like a divorce, right? Where the friends are going to choose sides. And so the fans have kind of chosen sides.
It seems to be that way, but that's the thing to me that's a little bit frustrating about this whole thing is that people can't seem to recognize, like, could you imagine, and maybe you can, but I couldn't imagine an actor that worked for like Paramount doing movies, and then another studio hired him away and he did movies at that one. Would you suddenly be like, oh, I'm not going to see any Paramount movies because they fired my favorite actor?
Yeah.
It's to me, it's like, no, you go because you're interested in the talent, and the studio that produces that then helps the talent make them famous, whatever. I don't know. I just don't have this kind of personal connection to such a degree that I would be upset if like, well, their agreement didn't work out and so they had to move on. So I'm mad and I'm not going to watch anything more by them.
I think the difference between your hypothetical and the reality is that Daily Wire works very hard to make their fans feel engaged, like by supporting What Is a Woman or whatever. You are actually engaged in the fight against this crazy transgenderism stuff.
Yeah.
So they work very hard to make the fans, and they launch these products. They're she/her bars and he/him bars, and one of them has nuts, and you can guess which is a great line. And then you buy that product and you are actually helping them stay afloat and fight back against some of this crazy lunacy we're seeing from Trump.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me that such an engaged fan base is gonna say there's a right and a wrong here and are gonna pick different sides.
Sure. I
mean, I guess so. And maybe it's then that some people are just naive when it comes to the nature of business and relationships. I don't know why you can't have. To me, there's no problem in supporting both. I mean, that she left in a way where she said, basically what we can see is that they couldn't agree on a contract moving forward. She had a vision for what she wanted to do with her career, and evidently it wasn't the same as what the Daily Wire was offering. Mm-hmm. And so she thought, well, the best thing for her was to move on. And so that's what's happened.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the Daily Wire is bad because they didn't agree to what she wanted?
I'm not saying it is, or I don't think it is bad for not making a deal here, but I'm just not surprised that other fans feel differently.
Yeah, to me, what it shows is the immaturity of a lot of fans. Because
that's what I was actively trying to avoid saying just now, and he just insulted them.
No, but what I'm saying is, what I mean by that is, one of the common lines that Ben Shapiro is so famous for is what?
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Exactly. And instead of embracing that view and saying, well, what are the facts here? Not what are my feelings? What are the facts? What actually happened? What I've seen too much of is the fans leaning into feelings rather than going and seeking actual facts and then accepting the facts when they're given to them. They try to keep seeing something underneath what is being presented, what is being actually stated.
I mean, it's certainly true. Like the video of the meeting between Brett Cooper and the Daily Wire has not been produced. So like compared to, like these Senate hearings that are going on right now, you don't know all the details like you would in that situation.
True.
So I understand why people are looking for more, but I think you just gave us a very nice segue to the next part of this.
Okay. I'd say so, and it has to do with the whole theme of the video
first
itself.
video.
Exactly. Which is not, we sometimes, the left is going to have a good idea and it's smart to adopt it, but it's very dangerous to play by the left's rules too much.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the theme of Brett's episode today.
Yeah. And that is, let's talk about right-wing cancel culture.
Yeah.
her examples are like, she starts off with Whitney Cummings, who is
2024 election fried our brains. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary because they were too busy holding a body upright. Are we still rolling? Am I off?
Go for it.
It was amazing that the pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to the presidential candidate. Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer or Moderna, whichever one's, oh God. Andy just gave me a very scary look.
No!
Yeah, comedian. Yeah, it plays into what you're saying, Thomas, about the feelings behind it and like the mob mentality. You know, the fact is, people like Whitney, back during COVID, she was a big vaccine proponent. She was all like lockdowns, COVID, get vaccinated, very leftist in that kind of militant way.
She drank the
Kool-Aid.
Well,
And a lot of good people did.
Yeah.
right. And just to mea culpa a little bit, you know, I wasn't saying you should take it. I was saying I'm probably going to take it. And I did end up taking it. And I thought, you know, you probably should wear a mask, at least at first. I knew there was always conflicting reports on that. But no one, you know, everyone says this and it gets really old, but no one knew what was going on with COVID in those first couple months.
Yeah.
No one knew.
Yeah.
And people were going to make mistakes, and people did make mistakes. And I think it's fair to assign blame when they wrongheadedly continue in those mistakes when provided with counterfactual evidence. But before that point, before the evidence is there, it's hard to blame people for making a mistake.
Yeah, but to that point, I think she did dig in and was very vocal and aggressive in regarding the vaccine and the mandates for the vaccine and everything. That's like you were saying.
She did.
So it wasn't just, this sounds like a good idea. It was, everybody needs to get on board this. And so I think that kind of upset, I would say rightly so, a lot of folks who especially believe in like, you know, freedom and stuff like that the government shouldn't be mandating the solution to things, especially when we're not even sure the solution's good.
Right. But I think the point here that Brett makes is that people can change their opinion.
Exactly.
And yeah, maybe she said a bunch of stuff that was very problematic and maybe even caused harm. If a person is willing to change, we should be willing to consider that change genuine.
And that ties into one of our biggest critiques we've always had about woke culture.
Yeah.
Which is that woke culture has no forgiveness.
Right.
Yeah.
There is
no mercy,
there's no way to
grace.
come back. If you make that mistake, you're done forever until the end of time.
Yeah, wholly lacks grace.
Right. And as Christians, we all know that we are so incredibly indebted to the grace of God and to other Christians around us that there's no repaying that.
Yep.
And so it's maybe easier for a Christian to wrap their head around, okay, Whitney Cummings was wrong on this issue, or as we're going to get to, Bud Light was wrong to send Dylan Mulvaney that beer can.
Or even Mark Zuckerberg, much as I hate to say it.
And he harmed us specifically. So it's more personal there. But it's maybe easier for a Christian to say, okay, forgiveness is actually one of the chief things we are called to as a Christian. So I can extend that even to a more secular aspect of my life, which is someone who was wrong about COVID and was preaching government propaganda. Yeah. And I can forgive them, especially if they say, hey, what I did was wrong. I know better now.
Well, I mean, the deeper underlying issue, irrespective of what the specific issue is, COVID or anything else, what she was demonstrating early on was tribalism. And what
Mrs.
ironically,
you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Still, yeah.
And ironically, people who don't want to forgive her or accept her are demonstrating the exact same attitude, tribalism. It's like, you're a part of that group. You're not allowed to be a part of our group. You're always a part of that group. And that's what's been the problem this whole time with woke and all this other stuff, and the lack of being able to actually come together as fellow human beings and communicate and recognize that we have different ideas based on different things we know and experiences. And how do we kind of navigate those? And the tribalists say, well, I don't really care what you think or your experience or any of that stuff. You're a part of that group. So I'm not going to hear you or listen to you or accept you.
Yeah. And there's never going to be any forgiveness. And we're going to ruin your life because you said something a long time ago.
Yeah. And on tribalism, I think tribalism is easy. It's natural.
Yeah.
It's what you're going to default into if you're not careful.
It doesn't take a lot of thinking.
It's very easy to say, oh, I was right about the vaccine and y'all were wrong. And so I'm going to lord that over you for the rest of time. And, I understand the desire to do that. People who know me know that there's very few words I like hearing better than you were right, I was wrong. And very few words I enjoy saying less than that.
Yeah.
I don't think you're unique in that.
I'm not unique in that, but it is something that I struggle with in my life. And so I'm talking about me. But the point is, tribalism doesn't actually work, despite that fact that it's easy. Tribalism, there's a reason tribalism is what we think of when we think of humanity 10,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. We've made a lot of progress since then, and we didn't do it with tribalism. Mostly. Sometimes tribalism played a part.
Well, I think, we're kind of going down a little bit of a rabbit trail here, but the reason it existed was it was a form of protection.
Yeah.
If you were in the clan or the family, the tribe, your being marked by being a member protected you. And if you weren't, there was not protection. And so it's an easy instinct, you could say, to kind of default into.
It is a human default.
And it can be built into something greater and positive.
Right.
But the challenge, I think, is it's hard for people. The harder route is to actually listen and see people as individuals, and that we're all human beings. And so that because we're all human beings, we have much in common because of that. And so what we seek to do is, well, where can we recognize the common ground, recognize that we need to communicate, and recognize, like she hits on really well,
like Brett
people change. Mm-hmm. People change their minds, but how do they change their minds if they're not allowed to hear, or which is what the cancel culture ends up doing, or if they do change, they're never forgiven or allowed to be brought into the group, because somehow this puritanical spirit has arisen that says, only the true believers are the ones that are allowed in, and they were the ones that were here from X date and believed all the things.
Exactly. And that's the difficulty of rejecting tribalism, is it's just harder.
Yeah.
Because you have to look at every situation and make calls that differ from situation to situation. Like me personally, I'm not actually ready to say, let's buy Bud Light again.
I got us a beer pong table, and a keg of Bud Light is on ice if y'all are all down to clown.
I'm probably not going to buy Bud Light ever again unless I get what I want, which is them saying, hey, we know what we did was wrong. Mm-hmm. Buying into this transgender crap and the mutilation of human bodies and fully functioning organs was evil. It was bad that we endorsed that. And we're sorry we did it. They don't have to say we're sorry, but if they at least say we know what we did wrong, I'll be happy. They haven't done anything like that so far. They've just said, oh, okay, we'll do the bro frat stuff. And that's an improvement. But me personally, I'm not going to forgive them unless I hear them say we know what we did was wrong.
Did you ever buy Bud Lights before? Were you a Bud Light
If I was
drinker?
at a bar, I would buy a Bud Light if I, just wanted something quick.
Yeah, I was never a Bud Light drinker anyway, so
Yeah,
it's not.
no, I was never a big Bud Light drinker either, but
Yeah.
they have lots of sub brands and stuff.
Yeah, it's Anheuser-Busch. They've got all kinds of stuff. They employ 65,000 Americans.
Yeah.
They spend like $1 billion a year on buying materials from farmers. So they are kind of a big American company.
Right. Brett Cooper and Dana White.
Yeah, Dana White came out and said all those things that I just said.
Make very good arguments for supporting Bud Light. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm saying, me personally, I'm probably still not going to forgive that.
Yeah.
But kind of the point she gets to, and Dana White was getting to, is that these big American brands, they're American. And actually, that's better than a Canadian or a Chinese or a Vietnamese brand. It's the American brands really are better, because this is the dirty little secret that probably everyone who listens to us knows, but people don't like saying today. Some cultures are better than others.
You heard it from Sterling.
Yeah.
Send all your hate mail there.
Yes.
Some cultures are better than others. There are cultures that are just bad. They exist. And cancel culture is one of those things.
Yeah. There are cultures, and, most of the bad cultures are on the dust heaps of history for a reason.
Yeah.
So,
but communist culture, that's a Soviet culture. That's a bad one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a fair point. I think that Brett was very intentional in how she chose the topic for this first episode. It was really wise of her to go at it from the position she did, She didn't overtly say anything about Daily Wire, but she addressed, I guess you could say, the elephant in the room. And that is because, like we were saying before, there are huge swaths of her fans who are just mad at the Daily Wire, or there are people who are mad at her because she's left the Daily Wire. And, you know, that's a form of cancel culture in its own right. And so she comes in with this episode saying, let's talk about these different examples of cancel culture and why it is the antithesis of conservative values, basically. And that, you know, we should be careful about doing that. And we should have an attitude towards grace and forgiveness. And what a better way to do it. And what a great way, a very positive way to start off her new show.
Yeah.
And I just think, you know, applause. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job, Brett.
And in terms of her success, she's on her YouTube channel where this episode premiered just now, 888,000 subscribers. So she'll be at 1 million probably by the end of by next month.
Yeah.
And she's at 131,000 likes on her premiere episode already, which is, counting. By the time our episode comes out, it'll be much higher.
It'll be a week after once this comes out. So yeah, I'm sure it will be much bigger numbers by then. We'll see about what her cadence is. I wouldn't be surprised if she's putting out at least one a week.
We'll see, because she said it's going to be slower. I guess I don't know how often the comments.
I think comments was daily. Was
it daily? Okay.
I don't know. Can she keep up with the PopCons?
Only if she releases before Thursday.
Yeah.
Brett, Wednesdays. That's the only way you can beat us.
Yeah. I think it was a very good episode. I thought she kind of brings in the point of, maybe I was reading into this more than she actually said, but she kind of brought up the point, I thought, that Donald Trump, you know, could have stayed at home in Mar-a-Lago and played golf for the rest of his life. He didn't actually have to run for president again. And most of these horrible things certainly no one would have tried to shoot him.
Yeah.
But he didn't, because like Bud Light, which I've said my piece on, and like Disney and like Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, America is actually pretty special, and it's worth preserving if it can be preserved. It's worth redeeming if it can be redeemed. And I think that is a very good message, and I think it's one that is very important for this political moment as we are experiencing a turning of the tide. I don't know how else to put it.
Shift.
A cosmic shift in our governmental system in America right now.
When you're seeking to influence people to join your perspective on where we think the nation, what we think this nation is about, and where we think this nation should be moving and going, and you're in the midst of a cultural revolution, because that's what's happening. You win effectively by getting as many people to join you as possible that then feed into that new cultural vision, or the vision for the future. Right. And
that's actual inclusion.
Right. And so the tough thing, and it always happens because it's human nature, our fallen nature, is there's rivalries and jealousies and misunderstandings that all come into it. And there can be temptations to start attacking your own because of some disagreement.
It's a lot easier to divide with someone who agrees with you on 95% of stuff than someone who agrees with you on, 50% of stuff, surprisingly, even though there's a bigger difference. When you agree on most things and you find that thing you disagree on, it feels bigger than when they disagree with you on like half of all things.
Because you already know.
Well, yeah, there's that. There's also the question of what is the issue that's being disagreed on.
Sure.
Yeah.
And learning how to live together, which our country has had to do since day one.
There's been multiple cultures in America from day one.
Right. And so, but there's, historically we've been described as this great melting pot. Within the melting pot, there's like chunks. And those chunks can be kind of understood as the different maybe cultures, etc., and ideas that kind of can float around. They don't really fully mix, but they're part of the bigger whole.
Yeah.
And what we've kind of gone through with the kind of rise of woke and everything is woke wanted to effectively eject that view entirely. And it had this almost puritanical, this is where the future's going, get on the right side of history, quote unquote, and everything else is going away. So you need to be here. Yeah. And the vision that it was offering was frankly, insane. There was no foundational eternal truths in it at all. It was just a mishmash of you can be whatever you want, but if you dare deny that, then you're bad and evil.
And it is almost because it's not dead yet.
Yeah.
It's dying, but it's not dead yet. Or at least it's wounded. There's no vision beyond you did something I don't like, don't do that. Like that's the extent of the vision.
Yeah.
And maybe it's you did something I didn't like 200 years ago and you need to make up for that.
You're that old?
I'm actually Highlander. There can only be one.
Yes.
Where's your sword?
I've got a few. Completely derailed.
Yeah,
where I was saying.
Sorry.
But woke doesn't have vision. It doesn't have vision beyond tearing things down and saying, stop that. It doesn't say, here's where we should be actually striving, other than we should all be striving together, loving one another, completely devoid of any actual agape, which is the Greek word for all encompassing love. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't have a vision. And what we're seeing now, I think, is America with a vision again. And the vision, it still needs shaping, but some of the vision is, hey, let's actually be proud of ourselves for the awesome things we've done. And let's try to do more awesome things.
Yeah.
And that's a really good start, I think. And I think that's kind of what Brett is saying, is that as all these people are coming to the right wing, like who could have imagined Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. and Marco Rubio in the same presidential cabinet before this election?
It's remarkable.
Mm-hmm. You probably wouldn't have seen Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance in the same presidential cabinet before this election.
Yeah.
And now all these people are working together. And let's do some awesome stuff. And let's not cancel each other over things we were wrong about and have admitted we were wrong about.
Let's have an attitude towards grace, attitude towards justice as well. I would say cancel culture is not justice because it is akin to vigilante or mob justice, which is not justice. I would say the incoming administration does, at least so far, seem to be with an attitude of justice as opposed to vigilante justice. I hope that does remain. Let's try not to be too vindictive.
Yeah.
Even though there are genuinely crimes that were committed. If people are willing to say I was wrong, then come on in. You're welcome.
Here's a thought I had watching her video. I wrote this down really big. Are you ready for this super deep philosophical insight from Sterling?
Yes.
President Joe Biden, was really bad. He really was. Like he genuinely was a horrible president. And his administration was bad for just about everybody. Mm-hmm. And maybe some version of an amnesty for what we did when America was going crazy is valid. And we say, okay, everyone did and said some crazy stuff. America was, convinced that we were all racist and sexist and all these other isms. And now we're in the light again, the clouds have parted and we can actually see what's around us. Maybe we should just say, okay, that was then. Going forward, things count, but the stuff before then, we're not going to tear your eyes out for what you did back then.
For what you did when the world went crazy.
For when the world went crazy. And we can just say, okay, things count from January 20th, 2025. If you do something terrible after that, then we're going to get you. But if you did it before then, okay, maybe there's some leeway.
I mean, I think we're in the process of even kind of seeing what the vision is. I mean, as Americans and with the Constitution, which defines what we are, we should have that. We've had that vision the whole time. It's a returning to it and realizing of it in a way that we haven't seemingly seen from our government in a long time.
Yeah.
So it's where are people at? Hopefully people are seeing things. A new generation is starting to understand things. They're recognizing the faults of some of the ideas that they were taught, all these things. And it takes a generosity and it takes an understanding and it takes a patience to be able to try to bring people along and help them see things and understand things and really embrace the truth. That's ultimately embrace the truth of who they are, what this country is and what it means to live, live as a good neighbor. All these things. And so, vengeance is an easy instinct to fall into. It's very easy because it's also very emotion based. And, it's easy to try to like, well, they deserve this or they don't deserve this, which is probably true. They probably don't deserve, but that doesn't mean you withhold it because you want them to meet some impossible standard.
Mm-hmm. And just interestingly on vengeance, it seems like that's something Trump is moving away from. In his first term, he was very much you hit me, I'm going to hit you back 10 times as hard. This time he's much more, we're going to actually just follow the law. And that's what's going to get you.
Yeah.
Is you use the law against me. I'm just going to play things fair. And that's going to kill you because you broke the rules so badly. I do think, as we see these crazy people who are now suddenly starting to wake up and coming over to our side, which I've seen a lot of that on Twitter recently, actually, specifically regarding these Senate hearings. I think St. Paul said it. I think it was Paul said it really well. As they are, so were some of you. I can't remember the verse on that one. I remember the words. I don't remember the chapter and verse very well. 1 Corinthians. Yeah. So that was Paul.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's have an attitude of, we do have to play by their rules to some extent, but now we don't have to anymore. We don't have to play by the left's rules anymore. We can play by the rules of law and of justice and of charity and mercy and grace. And let's do all that.
Yes. You can bring in the mercy and the grace when you have the justice.
Yeah.
Then you can bring it in. If you don't have the justice and you try to do mercy and grace, it's not going to end up being merciful or graceful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have to define what mercy and grace is.
Yeah.
Because mercy and grace is not the same necessarily as just letting someone off scot-free.
Right. All right. I guess that's pretty much the end of the conversation. I can't think of anything else. This is the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew. We're brought to you by the Patriot Post, which is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. It's right and it's free. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.